And it's about understanding your impact, and it's about actually thinking about at every step of the business process, the impact that you have on people and the planet.
Hello and welcome. I'm Elizabeth Formosa, the founder of Fashion Equipped and devourer of all things fashion, business and mindset. In this podcast, I'm speaking with thought leaders, change makers and entrepreneurs about the business side of fashion and everything in between. Fashion Business Mindset is your front row seat to real stories from designers, brands, entrepreneurs, makers and mentors. We'll discuss how to launch and grow a fashion business and give you insider access to the future of fashion. So let's do this together and ensure that you're equipped to make the fashion business your business. Welcome back to Fashion Business Mindset. In today's episode, I speak with Marnie Goding, the co-founder of ALC. With a background in events and marketing, Marnie is a self-taught entrepreneur with a passion for sustainable and ethical fashion. Stemming from a desire to see broad sweeping industry change, Marnie is moving ALC in a unique direction, proving there's a better way to run a business and make products. Her commitment to social and environmental responsibility has earned her numerous accolades and recognition as a leader in the industry. A pioneer of independent Australian design, ALC was established in 2004 in Melbourne. Leading with a philosophy of conscious fashion, the business was founded on a belief in creativity, innovation, authentic design, contemporary fashion and independent, ethically made products. The ALC mission includes to responsibly create products with enduring value through a thoughtful, intelligent design philosophy crafted with an artisanal aesthetic, to lead a conscious business supporting traditional trades and a circular economy that operates ethically and transparently in safe, fair and inclusive workplaces, and to minimise the environmental footprint and create a positive impact on local and global communities. Recently, Marnie and her co-founder Adam participated in Fashion Redressed, a global film series produced by BBC Storyworks and presented by the Global Fashion Agenda. ALC's inclusion in this prestigious series is a testament to their ongoing commitment to conscious fashion and provides a unique opportunity to share their sustainability initiatives and values with a global audience. We've included the link to the BBC feature and ALC's 2023 Transparency Report for you in our show notes. An absolute must-watch and must-read. This is a dynamic interview that provides a deep insight into a much-loved, iconic Australian brand and gives you a front row seat to what it takes to achieve longevity in our industry. I loved every minute of my time with Marnie, and no doubt you will too. So let's dive in. Marnie, welcome to the Fashion Business Mindset podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Now, Marnie, before we dive into all things ALC today, I'd love for you to set the scene for our audience and share some insights into your journey before co-founding ALC.
Sure. So ALC was co-founded nearly 20 years ago, actually. So we've got quite a history behind us. But in the early days, I actually did a degree at RMIT. I studied a degree in social sciences and specialised in marketing. But I also did a cookery class or cookery school as well. So I actually ended up in the event space and worked for the National Gallery for the first part of my career, and then ended up at Melbourne Zoo. So I've got quite a breadth of experience, prior to ALC. But I think business is business, really, and it's just a different application.
So what inspired you to go into fashion and retail?
Well, I think I always aspired to own my own business because I come from a family of small business entrepreneurs, and My husband and I met very early. I was the ripe age of about 17 and a half. And he actually was running his own business already. He's a few years older than me, but he was a fine jeweler. And I think that early on, we both loved the idea of working together. Perhaps it was the honeymoon period, I don't know, but we did also always aspire to work together. And once I had commenced my career, I think I was just constantly fascinated by the way that he was running his business and the opportunities that were there that were ripe for the taking. And I think that pretty quickly we saw there was an opportunity for his business to evolve. And we could see that there was an opportunity there for marketing to broaden his customer base and also broaden the opportunities for him to grow his business. And so really, I suppose it came out of a bit of fun. And, pretty quickly, I saw that there was an opportunity for him to change the way that he was working and find a way to get a customer to come back more frequently, because he's working with high-end materials and making products that were, diamond engagement rings and things like that, things that people didn't need to come back to, maybe once every few years or every 10 or 15 years even. Yeah. And so I started teaching myself how to make more lower end costume fashion style jewelry. And we also had a lot of fashion friends or people in the fashion industry, and they were asking us or commissioning us to make things for them and their runways and collections. And I suppose, as we started making new things, the customers kept going back and, demand just built. It was a really exciting time, actually. And I think that Elk has evolved from that time. And that was probably a good couple of years, actually, before we even registered the business. So I suppose, that 20 years can be plus a few extra on top of that.
Yeah, well, the honeymoon period definitely lasted 20 years. That's that's no minor feat in the fashion and retail space. So let's talk about the brand values, the ethos, and what were you setting out to achieve? I'm sure that's evolved over time, but once you kind of did formalize the business in those early days, what were you setting out to achieve with Elk, and how has that, evolved over the last 20 years?
Well, I think if you're a clever entrepreneur, you've got a bit of a plan. We didn't really have one. So I think, we started working together because it was great fun. We could see lots of opportunities. And we wanted to have a business that employed people and created opportunities within our community. And it certainly did that pretty quickly. But we also wanted a business that really focused on ethics and, being a great place to work. We both worked in environments and for bosses that weren't that great to work for, and we really didn't want that to happen again. So I suppose we set up a way of exemplifying what we believed a good small business would look like. And, I think those values have certainly held true to this day. And, we're very proud of the business that we have built. As the business evolved, I think that what we went from was we had to have functions of business as usual. We had product to make and sales to make and customers service to fulfill. But, the story of Elk is one, I suppose, of transparency and one of evolution. And I think that in some ways mimics what should be happening in the broader industry, not only in fashion, but in every industry. And it really is a journey of what we call transformation. So we had ethical foundations, and ethical foundations really focused on providing good, safe, fair and consistent work for people who made product for us and who worked with us. And they're values, again, that we still stick to today. But I think as we went on, we had a couple of experiences pretty early on in our career that were involving supply chain overseas. And we saw things that we found were certainly didn't align with our Western ideals or our expectations, and by any standard we were faced with working conditions where we felt that workers' safety or the conditions that those workers were operating in were less than ideal. And that there was certainly a very visible environmental impact from the product that we were making. And it was quite shocking as young people, as Australians, who I think in some ways, in our Western developed world that we live in, on this side of the continent it was quite surprising. And I think that we came back to Australia and we travelled extensively, and every time we came back we went, we need to do something about this. Things can definitely be better. I know that we'll go back over this, but certainly today Elk aligns itself with 3 core pillars of people, product and planet. And those 3 pillars are things that guide us and our mission and our work today. And we're really informed by those early experiences that we had through our travels.
I think those early days of travel, not sure about you, but I know my experience, there's things that you just can't unsee. And obviously you had those experiences, and that really motivated you from very early on to find solutions, as you said, to do better. So I'd love to dive into those pillars, Marnie, the people, planet and products, because ALC has a commitment to ethical and environmental practices, and that's really made you quite a leader in this space. I mean, you are an iconic Australian brand that has amazing values, and the transparency that you've been able to share right across your business is absolutely outstanding. So let's dive in. Let's start with people. So you've spoken about values and culture, and no doubt that's right throughout your entire business. So what is the point of difference to how you are, working with people within your organisation?
People for us extends beyond just our immediate business, right through our entire supply chain. And I think that that's important for every business to think about. I'll just step back, one step, which might actually help sort of set the scene for the type of work that we're trying to do and the journey that we're on. And it's about understanding your impact. And it's about actually thinking about, at every step of the business process, the impact that you have on people and the planet. And I think, what's important to realize is that when we started doing the work that we're doing, there was no references. Yeah. There was no playbook to follow. There was nothing for us to say, oh gosh, like there is now. How do we do this? Where do we even start? If we had a guide to be able to say, okay, you do this, then you do that, and then you do this, and then you do that, and this is what you do if that happens. And that certainly didn't exist. So I think that this has been a learning process, and it's what I'm talking about now around people, planet, and product has certainly been something that we've really decided on ourselves. There's no rules in this environment. There's again, there's no playbook to follow. So what we do in terms of dividing up those 3 pillars is to make conscious decisions at every single step of the journey. Yeah. And our philosophy at Elk is conscious fashion. And obviously conscious is the way that we make our decisions, and fashion is what we actually do. So the people part of that is certainly focused on not only our people who work directly within our business, but it also is our suppliers, our third-party suppliers. So it might be our photographers or our hair and makeup people or the models who come and work for us. But it then extends right through the supply chain as far as we can. So the impact that we have, the greatest impact that we have on both people, but also the environment, is through the product we make. Mm-hmm. So the low-hanging fruit, I suppose, is to look after the people that work directly for us. And that extends to creating a lovely place to work. It extends to things like everybody gets a day off for their birthday. Everybody that works for us is given 2 days paid leave per year to volunteer. We have, lots of team days where we go and pick up rubbish. There's things that I suppose not business as usual or traditional work practices that people can get involved in. It also extends to community, so the direct communities in which we work within, so whether our retail stores are there or our head office or wherever, a connection to community and those people. And then the more challenging part is right through the supply chain. So when we're talking about supply chain, we're talking about everyone from tier 1 to tier 4, and tier 1 would be the factories that make our product for us. Tier 2 would be potentially the printers or the dye houses, and tier 3 would be the people who make the fabric, and tier 4 would be right back to farm. So our mission at Elk is really to map 100% of our supply chain. We've done that with tier 1 completely at 100%. We're nearly there with tier 2, and tier 3 and tier 4 are a little more challenging. And that in itself is a very long story. We could probably fill a whole podcast with tracing your supply chain. But I think that, in doing that, what we need to do is actually have really good working relationships with our suppliers, and they need to be okay with us asking some, in what I would say is traditional sense, some pretty uncomfortable or unusual questions. They're not used to businesses asking, for, to see the audits of the person who printed the fabric right back. It's really quite can be quite challenging, but it's something that I think over time those barriers are being broken down, and those suppliers are now certainly seeing these sorts of questions and demands that are being placed on them as being a little bit more normal, I suppose.
Yeah. And what has that taken from a resource perspective, Marnie? I'm thinking, those brands that are tuning in right now, perhaps are at the beginning of the journey. How did you get started, and how's that evolved from, resourcing? You've spoken about mapping your supply chain. Your goal is to do that 100%, and you ticked off tier 1. So it's a huge undertaking. Who's on the team that is accountable for driving that across the business?
So we have a dedicated team now who works for us. So Dr. Vibe, who I think you said you saw him speak recently on a panel. He's recently joined our business, and he has also somebody working with him. And they're charged with the responsibility of driving our journey and for keeping all mission critical things top of mind. They run a pretty hard line and don't allow a lot of flexibility, which is great because we need to be able to certainly prove that we can achieve the goals and get the results that we're aiming for.
Yeah.
I think for any business that's listening to this, and I think broadly speaking, what we're seeing is a change in industry expectation or understanding of what it means to run either an ESG program or to certainly try to progress any sustainable or ethical goals that they might have within the business. That you cannot do that yourself. You cannot, as a business owner or in another role, you have to keep business as usual running, because what we do at Elk, we're a for-profit business, and we have a huge payroll and commitments to our team that we need to fulfill.
Yeah.
And all of this work that we're doing is really what you would probably deem in traditional senses on top of that. So we have to first and foremost keep the business running. We have to be profitable, because that then funds this critical work, which has a really positive on-flow right through the industry and certainly through those suppliers that we've been dealing with directly.
Yeah.
So I think that business owners or anyone who's running a business needs to look at their organizational structure and actually understand that a sustainability or an ethical department or arm within their org chart has to become normal.
Yeah.
It is critical for this work. It is so complex. It is frustratingly slow sometimes. There's things that you go, top line, oh, we really need to make a difference here, or there's that's something that we really have to tackle. And sometimes these things can take months or years to actually see that needle or that dial moving in a positive direction. And you can only do that if you've got somebody on it full time.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think that, organisations that can't afford it right now, they need to be planning for this, as you said, in their org structure. We've got to be very conscious that without any profit in business, well, we're not going to exist. So, but it's got to be factored into the P&L. And I agree, it's going to be a non-negotiable for, the future of fashion, anyone to be part of the future of fashion, to be resourcing up in this space. And I did see Dr. Vibe speak at Melbourne Fashion Week. So I absolutely loved seeing him on a panel. We were talking about circularity and sustainability. His wealth of knowledge was just off the scale, just amazing. So what an asset to have someone like that on your team. So let's talk about planet and products, because Dr. Vibe was talking about your raw materials as a big core focus of your business, Marnie, when it comes to minimising your impact. So let's talk about, how have you progressed over time? Dr. Vibe mentioned that, you've got your fabric portfolio or menu and you're looking at improving every step of the way. So there's certain fabrics that you phased out over time. Perhaps they had a deeper environmental impact and you've replaced them with something else. You're focused on research and technology, whole host of things going on. What can you share around planet and products?
Well, around products specifically, I think that you don't know what you don't know. And that certainly is probably the story of our journey. So when we began all of this work, there was no resources there. Like I had 1,000, screens or tabs open on my desktop to try and navigate some level of understanding of what our current impact was or is. And that was really challenging. So I think what what we've done is we've looked at our impact across our whole business, and we know, it sounds obvious, but we know that our greatest impact is through our product. The greatest impact of the product is through through production and freighting, but also, and mostly importantly, through materials. So tackling that big topic of materials has been a really interesting process, because again, when we started, I went over to Paris with my clipboard and so pumped to go to Premier Vision to find all these incredible fabrics. And we're talking, probably, 10 or 11 years ago now. And went over, and I remember there was like one little booth in a corner with selling organic cotton from Turkey, and there was just an industry body and they could tell me nothing. And so I think that what has been fabulous to see is this groundswell of change has actually forced industry to change along with it, and is now seeing a lot more material options and innovation in that space that we hadn't seen previously, and that we desperately need for the future. Some of those options are still not commercially viable, certainly from a price point or from a scalable point of view. So, really exciting things like mushroom leathers and things that, that are out there are not still being produced in commercial quantities. So from a product point of view, what we did was two things. So the first thing we did was to create what we call a preferred materials guide, which importantly has to evolve. And we've used Textile Exchange and some other resources to actually create that guide. And the person who had been working with us, Erica Martin, for many, many years, she was pivotal in actually creating this guide. And so that guide really is there in terms of a very simple or simplistic kind of function to best inform our design team of what materials to choose. So in many cases, the level and depth of research that is required behind a particular fibre or a particular material is actually so extensive that our design team don't have time to actually do that research themselves. So our sustainability team will look at a fabric that might come across a desk and go, okay, look at it for all its credentials, and then actually pop them on that chart and say, okay, so cotton's a great example. So is it regenerative? Is it organic regenerative? Is it organic? Is it conventional? If it's conventional, where does it come from? Is it from Australia, Uzbekistan, Turkey, USA? Where is it from? And all of those fibres are really mapped out for our design team to be able to then go, okay, I've got this option, I want to make it in that. What's the best choice available? On top of all of that, which is a huge piece of work, probably addressing that you don't know what you don't know point that I made earlier.
Yeah.
It is all very good and well to go, I'm reading lots of research and I think that organic cotton's the best thing to use, or a particular fibre is the best thing to use. But until you actually innately understand or really deep dive into that particular fibre, you don't actually know how impactful or less impactful that choice is. So what we've done is we've gone ahead and we've mapped, I hope your listeners can throw out some examples here. I don't know of another fashion business who's actually measured their Scope 3 carbon emissions. So we've only mapped 60 to 70% of those carbon emissions, that's Scope 3. So Scope 3 really covers all of that production and growing stage of the fibres and things that make our materials. Yep. What we haven't mapped is that part which is the wearer. So if I wear it, how am I washing it? How am I drying it? Am I ironing it? Am I hanging it? Whatever, dry cleaning it. That's a really, really hard stage to map. And then end of life is the other thing that we haven't actually mapped as well. Like, it's just this huge piece of work that, we're faced with. But the point of this is actually going, what we have been able to do is actually put a line in the sand and go, okay, we know through HIG and those other tools that we use and all that work that's been done, that our carbon emissions are X. So to give you an example, I don't want to throw stats about here, but our measured carbon emissions for Scope 1, 2 and 3 was 2,000 tonnes for the last financial year. Now, previously, and most businesses will do this, is measure their Scope 1 and 2. And we'd been doing that for years, and we've been offsetting those and doing everything we could. We're 100% solar powered.
Wow.
It's 1%. In our little business at ELK, it's 1% of our carbon emissions. And that other 99% that make up 2,000 tonnes of emissions comes from our product. Now, if businesses don't know that, how can they show improvement? How can they show a reduction in carbon or a way of offsetting or even addressing the impact that they have if they don't know what they're doing, if they don't know what that impact is? And it's a huge piece of work.
I know. And that's why I'm passionate about sharing stories like yours, because we've all got to start somewhere, and it can be overwhelming. It is. It's like, where do you start? And of course, when we start to talk about, some of the structure like scope 1 and scope 2 and scope 3, it's, it gets complicated. But as you said, you don't know what you don't know. You've just got to start by, again, listening to podcasts like this, or engaging people who are experts in the space. Or as you said, have your 10 tabs open on your laptop and just immerse yourself. There's so much. We are fortunate. There is so much more information at hand at the moment. And there's often industry forums and panels and so much information out there. But then essentially it's about filtering that and applying it to your business based on where you're at on the journey as well. But huge congratulations, Marnie, to you and your team. What a phenomenal undertaking. And I've had a look at your transparency report from 2022, and it is huge. And the detail in there is just outstanding. It looks like, that would be a full-time project on its own, with the amount of information and, as you said, everything that you are mapping in the business. Is that something that you're going to continue to do on an annual basis?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the next one comes out in only a week's time. So, actually, no, it should be this weekend. So it's very close. Yes, absolutely. But interestingly, though, I think actually we're already doing a lot of that work. So in terms of, saying, well, some things are just, an update to existing information. Other things are important new findings for us to share, case studies or particular scenarios. What's important about a transparency report is actually being able to, in some ways, I don't want this to sound egotistical, but in some ways is actually to provide a playbook, to be able to say, for any businesses out there, take a little bit of this, take the whole thing. I actually don't mind. This is a way of us being able to share our learnings. And it's not about being able to publicly do that. It's about also internally doing it as well. So we attract like-minded individuals into our business. We want those who are just as passionate about living sustainably in their personal life as they are in their professional life to come and work for us, because they help us progress that journey. They're true to that, to living out that vision. But also our suppliers. And I think that this is something that I believe a lot of people or public don't understand, is that what we're asking of our supply chain is a huge shift. So, if you're going to talk about China in particular, they have they're traders and they are manufacturers, and they've been doing the same thing the same way for generations. And all of a sudden, almost overnight, very, very quickly, in less than a decade, we're saying, open up yourselves. Tell us things that you would never tell us before. Show us your pricing structure. Show us your supply chain. Tell us, we're going to audit you and we want you to fix those non-compliances. This is a huge shift.
Yeah.
What this transparency report does for them is prove to them that it's not only them that we're asking that question. They're also excited by that transformation, and they're also excited about the possibilities that they now are exposed to in understanding from their own media and their own demand about the change that has to be made. Because, this type of climate change actually really was something in those supply chains that didn't exist previously in some governments particularly, or some cultures. And so going back to one of those other core pillars before was something exciting under that planet pillar of ours is the supplier sustainability action plans that we've put in place. And so what we're seeing now is a really very joyous situation where our suppliers are going, oh, what can we do? And, so we're going, okay, we're going to put an action plan in place for you and with you to say, okay, what is it that you can do within your business? So, probably the low-hanging fruit of things like addressing waste and understanding where that waste goes and does that waste have another purpose. But it's even things now, some of our suppliers in the middle of China are going, we're going to put solar panels on the roof,
Wow. Yeah.
and we're collecting rainwater. And, that sort of stuff just makes me really happy, because really that is what we talk about, this ripple on and the ripple effect and this positive influence that the work that we're having, our tiny little business here in Australia. I mean, if some of these big companies, and some of them are doing an incredible job, they put in place these expectations, or certainly worked with suppliers. I think that's a critical thing to talk about, is working with the suppliers to say, let's do this with you. We're not going to place unrealistic expectations on you, which are going to then mean that you can't afford to do something, or you dock someone's wages, because, there's this whole on-flow effect. But let's talk about those solar panels. When do you think that you could put them in place? And, how many can you put in place? How much electricity can you generate on site for your own uses? So there's some really exciting things that are happening.
I love hearing about that excitement with your supply chain partners, because it sounds like it's becoming a win-win for everyone involved. And no doubt, as you mentioned in the beginning of the journey, you would have had some resistance, some pushback, because it was new to everyone when, as you said, you're asking your manufacturers questions that they've never been asked before, or asking them to, comply to certain standards that hadn't been in place, or maybe they were doing some things, maybe they weren't. But simply asking the question, I guess, is a good place to start, and working in collaboration. It's got to be a collaborative effort, as you said, working with. You're not just setting out these rules and starting to put the pressure on relationships rather than nurture those relationships. So I absolutely love that. And I love that you said that you're open to sharing. So businesses out there that are tuning in, Marnie has said, take her transparency report and go and implement it. But as you said, Marnie, that is the playbook. When brands or businesses ask, where do you start? Doing your research. There's so many businesses now that are publishing transparency reports, and they're a wealth of information. And as you said, that's a great, to start putting structure into your own business. Anyone who's tuning in, it's a good place to start your research. It's essentially the hard work has been done for you. You've still obviously got to go and apply that to your own business, but we'll make sure that we put that link in the show notes, because by the time this podcast is out in a couple of weeks, that report will be live, which is very exciting, Marnie.
Yeah, it is. And look, I think probably the big thing to say to anyone who is listening is don't be afraid. Yeah. The day that we pressed the publish button on our first report 5 years ago now, we were terrified. I didn't sleep for a week, because what is important through transparency is not to be touting the things that you know and the things that you've done, but it's also to talk about the things you don't know, to talk about the things that you've got a lack of progress on. And there's some things that I'm not embarrassed to say, but challenged with, that we haven't seen any progress on because of all of the reasons that are explained for in the report. But it's critically important to explain to the public, look, we're working really hard on this, or to your supply chain going, this is something we've been talking about for years and we still don't have a solution for it and we need help. What's wonderful though is that we are, as I said before, seeing progress in some of those areas that were previously really challenging. So I think that, don't be afraid to admit it when you don't have all your ducks in a row.
Yeah, I think that's such an important message. I mean, that's, I guess, the essence of transparency. It's the things that are going really well and the things that are still challenging us, but they're on the radar. And, it's going to be, this progress over perfection has been coming up throughout the last very many podcasts that I've been doing with business leaders. So I think as long as we're moving forward, that's the main thing. And just keep continuing to research and bring people on board that can help to move that needle. Marnie, I just want to ask you about accreditation. How important is accreditation? I know that you have organisations like SEDEX and Canopy and others that you're working with. How does that work into your overall responsible business journey?
It's incredibly important to have partnerships that you can help lean on to progress the journey, because, we as a small business, I think, are very typical of what a business in the future will look like, having dedicated people in your organisation who can help you progress ethical and sustainable goals or action plans. But still, I think the breadth of understanding and knowledge is so wide that you do need partners to actually help you to either learn or to help you achieve some of the things you're trying to do. We partner with organisations like Canopy and with SEDEX, with HIG and others to, and excitingly, we're just a new one, Pangolin, who's actually helping us to map our carbon footprint, because they've got real life cross-industry expertise and they've got teams that are there to help us as a resource. We just couldn't possibly do what we're doing without them. And I think that what's critically important today is that shared information and that shared knowledge. And, that there are some of the tools that we use that are being used by some really big companies, and we've got access then to data because of them that we wouldn't previously have. And it's so exciting to see the progress and the change and the increased capacity of even some of these platforms that wasn't there previously. And, when you've got the right partnership, you can really lean on them to help you out. What's really disappointing, though, is this topic of greenwashing extends not to brands, but also to some suppliers. And we've had a recent experience with somebody that we worked with that we, had been working with for a couple of years, paid them to do a job. And in some ways, I feel like there was a bit of greenwashing going on from their side. And And so working with credible partners, the point of this is working with credible partners, really. You've got to be very careful about who you select to work with you, and you have to be trusting, because in many ways, some of the data that they're producing is critical to decisions that you're going to make for the future. Like it will determine some of the things that they might tell you, that'll determine the steps that you take, or the technology that you bring in, or the innovation that you pursue. And when that information is not credible or not trustworthy, then that really can make a very significant impact on the direction that you might take for the future. So, yeah, accreditation's critical, partnerships are critical. And I think also too that from a credibility point of view, and from a verification point of view, it's important for us to be able to say that in some instances, yes, we've actually had this done by a third party, that it's not just us telling you that we've done something or telling you that we've achieved something. Yeah. This is actually can be calibrated, or it can be certainly rubber stamped from someone outside the business.
Yeah, I think that's a really important message, and it comes up a lot, the credible side of things, the verification. As you said, it's not just the brand or business saying, hey, this is what we do. There's been that third party that's cited and validated that everything that a business is saying has got, the green tick. But I agree, Marnie, what you mentioned about doing your due diligence to make sure that you're working with credible partners. So lots of ways to do that. Reach out to other organisations that are perhaps working, with an organisation that offers accreditation and certifications, just to make sure, as you said, that there's not going to be any risk to the business, because we need to avoid greenwashing at all costs. When you're doing this type of deep work that you're doing, that's the last thing that you need, is to go down a path where, a certification partner is not going to be the real deal, so to speak.
Yeah, and I think one piece of advice that I would give anybody who's listening is to have a code of conduct. So the ELK code of conduct was something that we put in place pretty early on, and continues to evolve as we see opportunities to evolve and improve that. And that extends to not only your internal team, but it extends to all suppliers that work with you. And it might even be, the onboarding of a new postal service, or, that code of conduct will give you some level of assurance that what's important to, in our case, ELK, and what we believe to be important to achieve transparency and avoid greenwashing is actually something that can be assisted with a code of conduct.
Yeah, absolutely. Set the expectations and the terms of trade, and make sure that there's full transparency for everybody involved. Now, Marnie, I'd like to switch channels now. Let's talk about the heartbeat of your business, which is your customers. No doubt they admire everything you're doing from a sustainability perspective, because conscious fashion is your ethos. But who is the ELK customer, and what is it that keeps them coming back year after year?
Wow, that's a good question. The ELK customer is, we're really proud. We've got a very diverse customer, not only from a size point of view, so we make from a size 6 to a size 20, and some of our styles fit even larger because they're the way that they're cut or designed. And we also have a very age diverse customer. So we're very proud to have few instances where we've got granddaughters and grandmothers shopping in the stores together. Wow. And there's a little bit of something for everybody. Our customer, I think, comes back year after year because we really design for a practical purpose. So we love and we watch the catwalks, and we love to see what other brands are doing. But at the core of it, our customer is based here in Australia. So we've got customers all over the world. We've got stockists that we sell to. So for this audience, we are a wholesale and a retail brand. So we've got 3 channels to market, including online. Interestingly, actually, our customer base, there's a shared sensibility it doesn't matter where in the world we are. So in the US, for example, we have a great affinity for and great success in the Pacific Northwest, which goes, covers Portland and all down the west coast of the US, and then up into Canada, into Vancouver and areas like that. And that custom, we say, is very much like a Melbourne or an Australian customer. So it's actually quite interesting how we're successful in areas that have got that similar desire for a similar aesthetic, a very practical customer who she wants to actually be able to wear our product every day. And, she wants it to last, and she wants to be well made and to be comfortable. And, we do all the things that a traditional design house does, as, wear a test and make sure the fabrics are good to wear and they wash well, and all the rest of it. I think our customer has an appreciation for authenticity as well, and value. So we like to think that, and we've got a very skilled design team who spend a lot of time making sure that the product is well made, well designed, very wearable, fits well.
Yeah.
And I think that's why the customer keeps coming back. So we've got this, and I've heard others on your podcast talk about this before as well, this idea of building on a wardrobe. So when you have a customer who loves you, or likewise, you have a customer who finds a brand that they love to wear, I don't expect or want people to come back and completely overhaul their wardrobes every season. What we would love to do is think that they can put something that they bought 8 years ago with something that they're going to buy tomorrow, and that they can layer that together, and that they can, make it their own in their own way. And if that's what we can do, and, have wardrobes that have got elk dotted amongst it over the years, I think that's great. But our customer, we're very lucky. She's very loyal and very diverse, and we're very proud of that.
Oh, absolutely love it. I love what you've mentioned there, the cohesion, through the wardrobe and through your collections. And you've got a forever customer because they can come back and keep upgrading their wardrobe, and everything works in synergy, which I absolutely love. Marnie, how do you maintain meaningful connections with your customers?
I think it's a lot easier to do now than it was when we started 20 years ago, pre-internet people. Back then it was the yellow pages, which didn't really develop a meaningful connection at all. But what's interesting actually is that I think what we learned very early on is I'm going to say, in the terms of marketing and customer connection, is we learned to walk before we ran. So in the early days, risk of sounding like a bit of a nanny here, I think what we did then, and we still maintain now, which is quite unusual for a wholesale business, is that relationship. And that relationship extends for us to those different channels. So again, we are a wholesale business and a retail business. And our customer then is also wholesale and also retail. So that wholesaler, we, from the very beginning, made sure that we had this very open, personable approach. We had agents on the ground, or salespeople on the ground, who were actually constantly connecting with our wholesalers to get feedback and to provide us with opportunities, but also them. And that certainly evolved as tech has evolved and opportunities for new businesses evolved into the same format that we have today. So our approach is formal yet approachable. We have a respectful and very valued relationship with all of our customers, and that's a service model that extends right through retail and then also to our approach online. So our customer service team, I cannot tell you, is incredible. I hear them on the phone sometimes just having a chat about someone's dog, and and then that's the customers will keep coming back for that, not because they want to chat about their dog, but just because they understand that we're giving them time.
Yeah. And
time is something that I don't think a lot of businesses have a lot of. We don't have a lot of it. And we don't want to be frivolous about it, but we know that customer trusts us, and they trust us because of the service that we provide consistently, that honesty and that integrity that we provide them through product and experience. That is meaningful. I think that's what, we can talk about social media, we can talk about being approachable, we can talk about being available and constantly reminding people that we're around. Yeah. But that's marketing, that's business. And I think that's normal. But it's the way that you approach that. It's about saying, well, what sort of content do you put out there? We want to be aspirational, but we don't want to be unachievable or unattainable, sorry.
Yes.
So it's finding a really genuine balance. And that's one of our core values, is authenticity. And I think something that we really stand by.
I love that. I love the authenticity. I love that you're a customer-centric business, and it's good old-fashioned service. And as you said, hearing those conversations on the phone, we talk about personalization, but just getting on the phone to our customers, and as you said, talking about the dog or what's going on in life, but just really giving them that focus of time for a few minutes can be just absolutely invaluable on their end. And of course, as you said, all of the beautiful things that you're doing around product and ensuring that the quality is there and that they're being served an amazing product that's going to be in their wardrobe for many years to come is outstanding. So absolutely love that. You've mentioned the sales channels a few times, and it's going to be one of my questions. So I think we should jump to that now. So you've said that, your wholesale, your retail, you've got your brick and mortar stores. Let's talk about those channels, Marnie. Like, what is the biggest channel in your business? What's working? What perhaps is a little bit challenging at the moment? And do you have a future vision for your distribution strategy that you could share with us?
We've got 3 channels to market at Elk. So we've got a wholesale business, which is both domestic and international. We've got an online business and a retail business as well. So we currently have 6 stores, and that includes one of our clearance or an outlet store, which is attached to our warehouse or our DC. And I think we're really lucky because that strategy of you having multiple channels is by design, and history has proven that when one channel's down, the other one's up. And that really, I think, was a big part of our saviour through COVID. Having a multi-tiered business has given us opportunities that previously wouldn't have existed if we were only retail, for example. Mm. Currently, we're seeing the balance shift. We used to be 60 or 70, then 60% wholesale, and that's now certainly swung as we see a much greater footprint from our retail stores growing, and also the opportunities, I suppose, that, it seems obvious to say that online actually provide us with. The challenge is in each of those channels is varied. In the wholesale sense, we're really very, very proud of the relationships that we have with our wholesalers, but it's a changing market. Our agents and our salespeople, old and new, I still keep in touch with most of them that have previously worked for us as well. They're all saying across every brand, not just Elk, that the wholesale market is changing. I think there's actually a real opportunity there for new business operators to come into the market. But I think that the days that we used to see of, going down your local strip shopping area and seeing those diverse and many or numerous multi-brand lifestyle or fashion stores, they're dwindling. And I think so we're really saying that's probably an aging category. However, I can cite many, many examples of wholesalers that we're still working with that are absolutely kicking goals. They're doing really, really well. So I think really, at the end of the day, a good business operator is a good business operator. It doesn't matter what channel you're in. So the wholesale side of it is interesting. The other challenge for us there is that we lost pretty much all of our international business over COVID. So we had huge distribution through the US, Japan, Canada. We've got still great business in New Zealand. We had business in the UK, and those stores are just either not there anymore or they've really changed. So we took a big hit internationally. It's starting to pick back up, which is really exciting, and it's something that we're going to be focused on. And certainly that I feel like globally retail is challenged, but at a scale that we're at, I think that we only see opportunity. So I don't think we've got quite the exposure we don't have the exposure that some of the big brands do.
Well, it's great to hear that there is still opportunity there. I'd love to dive a little bit deeper into wholesale before I speak to you about online. So you mentioned the challenges, and that would be good to see some new operators on the scene. You mentioned that those kind of lifestyle, I guess, or multi-category boutiques are perhaps dwindling a little bit. How do you see the future of wholesale? What are some of those big shifts that you see kind of coming down the pipeline at us? And if new operators were to come onto the wholesale landscape, how should they be operating to embark on the future of this space?
I think that this is a generational change that we're seeing. I think that when we entered the market 20 years ago, that type of wholesaler that was in operation was different to what really the opportunities are now. So I think that as we're seeing a generational shift in consumer behaviour, there's a really, I think there's a gap in the market there for businesses, multi-brand businesses that have got to focus on sustainability to open up in the marketplace. There's still a huge amount of innovation and a huge amount of creativity, particularly coming out of Australia. I mean, you still see the big design market and really fantastic, or the Sydney ceramics market, whatever it is, there's so much creativity coming out of Australia. And I believe that translates to great opportunity at retail, particularly in, you've got people's shopping habits have changed, but there's nothing like going down the street and having a coffee and going to the florist or going to the bakery or whatever, and then popping into your local store and buying something beautiful that someone's made locally, or a piece of clothing that's designed beautifully. And I think that I'm probably talking a little bit to some of the success stories that I still see here in Australia, and I'm talking from Perth to Sydney to Adelaide to Melbourne. It's not only isolated to the southern states or to the eastern seaboard. There is really great success stories across the board of people who are championing local design, championing creativity, and actually bringing to the customer a physical product an experience that they can't get online. And I think you'd be it would be very unusual to find someone who says, I purely only online shop because I hate going into retail and discovering something beautiful. Like, I just don't think that that's not how humans operate. So I think there's opportunities there to focus more on not the generic, but certainly the creative and the artistic and those beautiful things that people, small, medium and large, are still producing.
I love that. So it's a more curated experience. It's experiential, essentially. And so we're talking about creativity, more artistic kind of representation, focus on sustainability. As you said, really catering for this generational change, and I guess how our values in particular have shifted from being a consumer, but totally the way we're living our lives kind of post-COVID timeline.
Yeah, and I think editing's a big thing that we talk about in our business.
Yeah.
So, you go online to a great retailer, and I don't know about you, but I am just overwhelmed with choice, whether it's a homeware scenario, even a supermarket. I go, oh my God, I just need one rice cracker. I don't need 60 brands.
Yeah.
If I'm a really great supermarket or I'm a really great retailer, then I am going to narrow that focus. I'm going to edit back what I believe is the best option, be it price, sustainability, whatever it is, design, aesthetic. And that's really what great wholesalers do. They curate collections. At Elk, we would love there to be wholesalers out there who bought the entire collection every season, but we don't want them necessarily to do that. We want them to cherry pick, and we want them to take the best of what they know is going to meet their customers' needs. And this is what we're talking about, meaningful connections to your customers, understanding what your customer wants. And really good wholesalers will do that. And we can pick out, ahead of a pre-sale scenario with a wholesaler and go, this rack is for that customer, that rack's for that customer. And they can be very, very different because we know that they will select things that work for their market. And I think that opportunity still exists in areas where, in so many cities, Melbourne included, I think, have been decimated from COVID. So many opportunities where I would love to see some multi-brand retailers open up.
I love it. There you go, everyone. Marnie's just identified a big gap in the market. So
no responsibility.
If you're looking for an opportunity, she's just giving you $1 million one. No, but it might not be that quite yet. But definitely, I agree. There's definitely, things are shifting from a retail landscape perspective. And so we've got to move on accordingly. And I love just how you articulated that. It's got to be the edit and meaningful connections with your customers. So really just getting back to, humanization, isn't it? It's just really working on that level of meeting your customers where they're at. What do they want? What do they need? And how do you make it really a valuable experiential experience for them? Now, Marnie, let's talk about online. How has it been for you? How's the journey of the building blocks of building your e-commerce business? How have they come together? And are you having success there?
It's a growing channel for us, which is really exciting. And I think that I sort of feel like we're in this moment of innovative change, I suppose, if you wanted to coin a term.
Yeah.
The early days of the internet and understanding what value it had for our business, I think, has certainly seen a shift in our retail numbers. And is continually proving to us that our audience growth and our revenue growth is going to definitely come through, mostly through online. I think that, if you can get your strategy right, the world really is your oyster. But it's a complex scenario. And certainly, when we're in the world of fashion, we're not in a niche market. We might have some niche offerings and some uniqueness to our business that others don't have, but we're up against, it's a bit David and Goliath sometimes, I think. And so what we're doing is we're watching what some of these big companies are doing to be able to see what the best in industry is and the best in practice, but being able to actually then implement that or innovate to mimic or model what these other businesses are doing is pretty frustrating. But I think too, what we've done at Elk always is not really worry about too much about what everybody else is doing. We don't really worry anything about trend. We don't, we kind of do our own thing. And I think that's why we've stayed true to the type of product that we're making. We've stayed true to the service model that we have. And I think in some cases, because it's been interesting around online, even with, the whole question around free freight and free returns and, all that stuff that was so critically important in the beginning.
Yeah.
Now I think that message is sort of blown away a little bit, and it's actually going, well, like we've done at Elk, we actually look at, function first, business first, and customer experience. How do they align? And can we actually afford to offer free returns? well, no, we can't. We just actually can't resource that as a business. We prefer to have a reduced price than to try and build that sort of stuff into our product, because you have to be able to service that and you have to be able to afford to do that. And then I think some of those things too that were offered in the early days were actually probably a little narrow-sighted. So, things like free returns actually just encourage mass consumption. So it's like, well, okay. And we still do see it where people go, well, I don't know if I like that color, or I don't really know what size I am. So I'll buy 3 of everything and then I'll send it all back. And, the carbon footprint of that is huge because you've got product going here, there and everywhere. And then, the resources for us to manage that are quite heavy. So online's a really exciting channel, but it's really just about trying to chart the best course, find the best technology and the best partners to align yourself with, and provide the best service at the end of it as well.
Amazing. And what about physical stores? So you've already got 6 of them. How's the physical retail landscape for you at the moment? And do you have a vision to roll out more stores over time?
We would love to roll out more stores. So I think that that's probably partly in response to demand, but also partly in response to the change in wholesale market that we see. So previously we had a huge distribution network across Australia, and that has changed significantly. And so there's really good opportunities for us in areas, even regional areas, where we see potentially an Elk store could open. We know we've got a good market there. We've got a dedicated or a loyal experienced customer there. We would love that to be filled by an independent wholesaler, but potentially there's going to be some areas where that won't happen. So that's probably a longer term strategy. Shorter term, I think we've got people begging us for stores in other areas. But again, at Elk, we're really about walking before we're running. We really want to make sure that we can meet our market and meet our responsibilities before we take off too big a bite. So we're probably a little risk averse, which slows us up sometimes. But I think it does actually mean that what we do is we really make sure that it's the right decision before we do something, because, we have a balanced multiple channel business that we have to consider, and we have great respect for our wholesalers and we don't want to step on any toes, but we also want to realize the best opportunity for the business, because I think that at the end of the day, the irony is that we're a fashion business and that we're making product that really we just want to be able to offer a better option against what's out there. And so the more opportunity we can provide to meet our new customers and service the existing customers, I think is exciting. And so, a big part of that's through retail, because, we want our product to come with a story, and we want our product to come with an explanation, and for the customers to go, oh, okay, what is special about this product, and where was it made, and why did you make it there, and what's it made from? We want those questions. And a lot of that depth of relationship really has proven to be very fruitful coming through retail.
That's the exciting thing about physical retail. It's the immersion in the brand experience. And unfortunately, we just can't get that online. We love online, and of course, we need it in our businesses and it's so important, but there's nothing like, as you said, physically going into store, hearing from, the people in the store about how that product was created, even if it's a collaboration, being able to hear, there at the retail kind of forefront, how it's come about. So I think that we're talking about humanizing, again, brands, customer connection, those meaningful connections. You just can't get that, unfortunately, online. So very excited to hear that there could be more stores on the radar for you. Let's talk about international. So you mentioned that has taken off again. So, diluted across COVID, unfortunately, like most brands out there, but now it sounds like it's kicking off again.
Yeah. I'm not sure it's really taken off again, but it's certainly recovering.
Good.
We've actually just heard back from our distributors in Japan, which is exciting. They've been very quiet for many years now, understandably. So I think that, our team is probably in a bit of reset mode and looking at going, okay, let's just take a breath. What are the opportunities that are ahead of us? I think that as Australians, we have this interesting appetite for expanding overseas and for taking a bite out of that global market, when actually we have a lot to gain here in Australia. So I think that our perspective has changed. We're very focused on making sure that we meet and extend opportunities to our Australian or domestic market, and not get too big for our boots, I suppose, if you want to have a term to describe our approach at the moment. But it's also not about denying opportunity as well. And I think that as word spreads, as as communities move back overseas, and we're starting to see certainly a real shift in attitude and understanding too around the importance of sustainable fashion, or of conscious fashion, I suppose, not to overuse that word sustainable. There is a growing demand coming from international businesses to take products on board like ours, because they trust us. And I think that that's what transparency does as well. It gives a certain level of certainty, and it gives a certain level of protection against greenwashing that we do see coming through other brands. So I think that internationally too, I mean, we're so far away, and they invariably can't come to see us, so they will interact with us through our sales team or through the wholesale platform that we use online. The transparency report, I suppose, is the foundation. It underpins all of those claims that we're making. It underpins all of that work that we're doing, that gives those international buyers, particularly that don't have a one-on-one or lengthy relationship with us, some level of certainty to be buying into the brand, and gives us, I suppose, a leg up on some of the competition. And I think that we can see that starting to happen, and now it's just up to us to actually try and jump on those opportunities.
Yeah, and I guess it all comes back to the strategic plan of the business. It's like, where do you want to be? Where do you want to be showing up? And as you said, if there's still growth to be had in the Australian market, then we know how hard it is with the international model. So there's got to be a strategic reason, a return on that investment to go down that path. But it can also bring the global spotlight onto the brand as well. So I guess we can't have it all, can we, at the same time? So especially in a small business, you've only got so many resources, and you've got to resource up where the most immediate opportunities are.
Yeah, and I think I'm going to say we're an old brand in that sense, because we've done it. We have exported to Jamaica and Copenhagen and all over the world. And there's great opportunities, but it's really, in the grand scheme of it, is a lot more effort than it is benefit. And so, I think that's a getting of wisdom, really, is actually going, that dangling that carrot of opportunity that the international market, offers you, I think is much easier to grasp at an online level than it is at a wholesale level. But we love, again, that principle of independent businesses championing small brands, and independent design and creativity shouldn't just be excluded to Australia. It should be expanded worldwide, because there's some cracking retailers out there, and we'd love to see ourselves back in more of them like we used to be.
Where would you love to be, Marnie? Like, what's your, who are the top 3 international retailers on the wish list? Let's put it out there.
There's many. I might actually not name retailers so much as actually regions, but one area that I would love to see Elk in, and I think it would really sing, is in Belgium. So head of creative, a Marnie Goding, and I've been working together for 13 years now, and we have started traveling to Belgium each year, and it's like a walking Elk store. It is just our customer. Wow. So I would love to see Elk stores, or certainly representatives of Elk on the streets in Belgium. I think that would be an incredible place. I'd love to see us back in the US more extensively. I think that that US customer in the right areas really loves us, and they're such an exciting customer to deal with. We had great retailers in San Francisco and places like that, and they just got us. We got them, and it was really fun. Yeah. And then I'd love to see Japan coming back on board again as well. So, there's lots of great opportunities there for us.
Love it. Belgium, US, Japan. Watch this space, everybody. It's certainly exciting. Now, Marnie, we know that in a business like yours, there's a lot of moving parts. So let's dive into behind the scenes. Who is on the team? What is it like at HQ? We know that you're a design-led creative business. We'd love to hear how everything comes together at HQ.
We have nearly 90 staff now, 90 team members, I should say, which are spread across many different operational areas. We've got an off-site DC, which is an amazing place. I just can't tell you how proud I am, and as they are, of the operation that they've got running down there. They are managed by an incredible person, Sean, who has got it everything's running like clockwork. It's amazing. And so they manage all the distribution for the online orders and the wholesale orders. They receive all the incoming goods. And then we've got our head office, which we've just renovated and moved into not that long ago. It's an old cricket ball factory in Preston, and Adam, our co-founder and partner and crime, renovated and has created a beautiful space for us. So it was really lovely post-COVID to be able to actually come into an environment that was purpose-built. Previously, we were working in like probably can only be described as a sardine can. I look back now and think, cannot believe we did it. But now we're in a big, beautiful environment with lovely boardrooms and, sound pods and all the rest of it, and a design room, which they are just loving.
Wow.
And then obviously we've got our retail operation with our incredible managers and teams. And then we've also got agents who are subcontracted to sell for us in multiple states. So, I think we've probably, from a fashion business point of view, we're quite traditional in that, we've got all of those normal operational and admin arms. We've also got a design team that led by Amadio and a head of production, Anastasia, and a very, very experienced team. So many years at many big and small brands alike. I think what's important to understand is that we actually design everything that we make. We don't reproduce. We don't do those big overseas trips and bring something back and say to our factories, hey, you make this. We actually redesign, or we design everything ourselves. So the design team's quite extensive, headed by Amadio. We've got design assistants for accessories and apparel. We've got fabric specialists. We've got garment technicians. We've got head of production, QC. It's quite extensive. So we could probably make it easier on ourselves and run like other fashion businesses, but we don't, and we love that because we love that process of creating prints and color palettes and sourcing materials and creating the designs and then working with our suppliers offshore to make those products. So it's quite an ecosystem. Everybody's got critical function, I suppose, to make all the cogs turn at once. Yeah. But they're a great team.
What's a day in the life of Marnie like? What's your role in the business? How hands-on are you? Do you get to work on the business rather than in it these days? What does that look like?
I do now, actually, and that's only been a recent change. So after 20 years, I think, again, Amadio was critical for allowing this to happen, that I sat back at the start of the year and said, I really need to change the way that I work. I need to be allowing time for this sort of thing, which I didn't previously have. And so he's critical to me being able to function. So I was creative director. I've handed that title to him. He's now head of creative and I'm now brand director. So I really work mostly with our marketing team. I work with the design team and I work now more with the sales team. It's great. I can be more involved in planning, get down to the DC more, get out to the retail stores. So I'm quite spread, but I have this, this love of just being able to see a little bit of everything and a little bit of connection with everyone. Adam and I moved down the coast 2 hours away at the start of the year for our kids' schooling needs. And so that's made it desperately hard, actually, to maintain that connection and that culture that I crave and live for. So we found a new way to work. And I think that role transition was a big part of that. And I'm still figuring it out. But the team has been very gracious in allowing that change to happen. They're very understanding of us living out that ethos that we try to impart on them about finding a balance in life between work and personal life, and that family comes first, and that we certainly don't want to be talking about something that we're not going to be actually able to have in our own life as well. So day in the life of me when I have to go to Melbourne is 4 hours in the car. But I do consume lots of podcasts consequently, and have actually enjoyed some time to listen and learn things. And when I get to the office, it's like hit the ground running and don't stop until the lights go out. But I love it. I really love it.
Amazing. And what about your partner in crime? What about Adam? What about his role in the business?
So Adam does all the things that I hate. So I'm very lucky. I mean, he's incredibly creative. Thinking back, he's actually a jeweler by trade. So he has this incredible ability to do things with his enormous hands that are so tiny, and he's also very creative, but he's got incredible analytical head. He's great with finances. He does all the tax stuff and all the business structure stuff and works with our finance team and our operations team. He's great with systems, so realizing opportunities and implementing new tech and working with our COO, who's incredible. He handles all of that. He makes the business work and I get to do all the fun stuff.
Good on you. And so you should be getting all the fun stuff at this stage in the journey. Now, Marnie, let's switch that channel to you, focus on you. You've mentioned your amazing team, obviously such a dynamic ecosystem, as you mentioned. No doubt your role is very demanding and you're juggling all the things at times, but what support systems do you have in place that allow you to work optimally? Do you have routines around wellness and self-care? I'd love for you to share that with our audience.
I think the greatest thing that I've done in terms of self-care is the grandest gesture of moving. So we moved down the coast at the beginning of the year, as I mentioned previously, and it's grossly inconvenient from all aspects to do with work. But I think that, I have worked without a break for, Elk's been 22 years, and then prior to that, I don't think I've ever had any time off since I left university. And, I and Adam really want to be able to show our children that there has to be a balance in life. I think we want to be aspirational for them. We want to be great role models, but we also want to role model not only a work life, but a private life as well, and that health balance. So moving down the coast was a big part of that self-care philosophy. And in doing that, I think that we're still figuring out how to do it the best, but it's about being able to find a way of escaping, I think, what is a 7-day-a-week job, and in some cases 24 hours a day when the phone rings at 3 a.m. because the alarms have gone off. It really is about being able to, in some ways, remove yourself as a business owner from the situation that you find yourself in 7 days a week, really, because you have to be able to, if you don't function as a person or as a parent, then, everything just piles on top of each other and it really just becomes quite unbearable and you become unproductive and, could be sick and all the rest of it. So, and I think too, we've had some recent tragic scenarios which have reminded us that life is pretty short and that we have to look after ourselves. And I hate to think that there are situations where that forces you to sit back and go, I have to look after myself first. But that is the reality of life, isn't it? Stuff happens. And I think that we are in a situation where our business is established enough and our team is so strong. We're so proud of them. Our leadership team is experienced, and some of them have been with us almost since the start. And so they've grown up with us, we've grown up with them. And I think we have this mutual respect for the way that the business has evolved and the needs that we personally have in and out of the business to be able to get on with life. So we're not demanding as business owners. We're realistic. We model what we talk about, which is finding balance. And I think for the moment, we've kind of got it figured out, but who knows what will happen tomorrow.
Yeah, I think that it's so brave because you're stepping into the unknown. You've been so hands-on in the business. So, it's a huge decision to do what you've done. But as you've mentioned, you're doing that to really set an example from a lifestyle perspective for your team, for your family, and to bring that, again, that holy grail, the balance into your own life. And no doubt when something happens in life that really makes us stop in our tracks and think deeply about the why are we doing what we're doing? And, often at certain points in life, we need a reset, and that can really involve a huge change. So I wish you all the best with that, because it sounds like, having that balance between a few days at home, a few days in the office is something that I think a lot of us aspire to have when working in this industry. It is such a demanding industry, and you've been going full throttle for probably more than 20 years. Elk's 20 years old, but probably been going for more than 20 years. So congratulations to you, Marnie, for taking that huge step, and to Adam as well, because I'm sure that is going to show, and that's true leadership, and no doubt your team will be looking at you in awe in regards to how you're, managing the leadership in the business, from this moment on.
Thanks.
So, Marnie, let's talk about the retail landscape for a moment. So much has happened over the last few years. Is there anything noteworthy that you would like to talk about in regards to significant changes that we all need to have top of mind to really embark on the future of fashion?
Running a business, I think, is a multifaceted balancing act. So you can't, I don't think, call out one thing that's going to dominate another area that's just as important. I think finding balance is critical, because the service model and that retail experience, whether it's online or in person, actually has to be balanced through the physical environment or the online experience, if you're talking online, to the product, to the service. So I think that prior to COVID, I think that we were very much focused on reading all these great publications to get tips for what's next. And, we went through the whole experiential kind of trend of having to have pop-up things in stores all the time or whatever. Yeah. I think really what we've come to realize is that, retail for Elk, really, we want it to be a real experience, and people come into us not to be wowed or to, dance in the aisles like you do at some of the, some stores. Is actually just they've come in, they're generally time poor, they want to come in, they want value for money, they want great product, and they want great service, and they want to feel valued. I don't think that's necessarily ever changed, but I think we lost focus and tried to push too much emphasis on everything other than what the business was about, which is selling product. In saying that, though, I think the depth of experience needs to extend to value creation, and it needs to extend to scratching beneath the surface, if you want to say so. So when customers come into our store or they go online, they are faced with our mission. They're faced with understanding those core things that make Elk a little bit different, because not everybody has. We're not in Europe, or we're not in wealthy a scenario where people have got huge amounts of expendable income. Yeah. They want to come in and they go, okay, I'm going to come in and buy a pair of jeans. So what is it that, if I'm going to go and spend my $229 on this pair of jeans, and what is it that makes these jeans special? Why is it that I'm going to spend all of that money on that one item? And I think so brands need to focus very much on telling the customer more about that product. And I think that that's probably the shift that we're seeing, which I suppose is a little bit of an experience, but actually, what's behind the brand, what's behind the product, what is it that we need to focus on to give that customer those reasons or those justifications for spending their hard-earned money on something that we've designed. Because, you on the face value, jeans are jeans are jeans. You could go into any store and you could pick up a great pair of denim jeans. But what makes ours different to the one next door and to the one next door as well? And on product messaging, a service team who are well equipped with information to give that customer information if they want it, information in store to actually understand what's behind that product. And then I think that a new part of it, which is what we're working on at the moment, which is really exciting, is that circularity piece. So whether you are a car company or you're a furniture company or you are a grocery chain, taking responsibility for the waste that ultimately you create, whether that product's had one life or 12 lives between the point of purchase and the point of, I'm going to say, product death, when it cannot be worn again. I think the thing that we're looking forward through to now is circularity, and actually saying we are, and at Elk we've always, just through the way that we've operated, taken responsibility for our product. If someone sends, and they still do, they send back necklaces to us that they bought 12 years ago that are hacked, but we'll put them back together because we want it back around your neck. That's the most sustainable thing you can do, is wear what you've already got. What we do want, though, to do now is actually put that a little bit more in front of the customer. So we've created care and repair videos. So we're saying, once you've bought your product, we have got customers sending stuff back to us because a button fell off. Like, whoa, you need to be able to know how to sew a button on, because, God, by the time you freight something back and forward, the carbon footprint of that product's just gone way beyond where it should. But in stores, what we believe we will see more of, and credible and very valued systems around circularity. So taking product back to either repair it and getting it back to the customer, which is what we're doing through what we call our Renew program, or actually having a repair workshop in store. So we're hopefully early next year in our Preston flagship store, it's going to get a full renovation, which will be exciting. And part of that renovation will include our Renew program. So we're already selling that product in store, but we're also setting up, we've got a repair workshop at the moment, but it's sitting within our DC. We'd like to bring that more in front of the customer to say, this is the future of fashion.
Yeah.
Not only fashion, but it should be all of retail. Imagine if you could take a cushion into, I don't want to name brands, but one of the big homewares chains and go, I've got a hole in it. Can you sew my cushion back together? Like, rather than tossing it out and buying a new one, that's the future of business, not just fashion.
I absolutely love that. I love the Renew program. I've had a look at your videos and I love the repair, like all of the repair tutorials. And actually, when Dr. Vibe was speaking on the panel, he was talking about like your initiative around Take Back, and we're all in awe. Are you going to take that one step further at some stage in regards to taking full garments back at end of life?
Absolutely. So we already do that if someone sends something back to us, or if something's faulty, then we'll do that already. We're going to broaden that to the general community to say anything. It doesn't matter how old it is. If it's elk, you can send it back to us if you don't know what to do with it. So the idea is that, and the great thing now is that there's options available in terms of circular solutions for avoiding landfill, because that's really what we're talking about, is avoiding landfill. In itself, a program like our Renew program, so for the people who are listening into this, the idea is that if a product comes back to us and let's say you've, I don't know, torn the leg of your jeans and you like, I don't want these anymore. I can't deal with them. So we'll go, okay, we'll sew them, we'll patch them, and we'll basically rebadge them. We'll put a Renew tag in them to show that they've been repaired. They'll be laundered, pressed, and then put on the shelf and sold as a secondhand product. I think what's exciting, we've been talking about this for years, right? Yeah. When we first started, we're like, oh God, people are going to want to buy stuff at the same price as they get in an op shop. Right? Okay, well, we can't do that because by the time someone that comes in, you triage it, you deal with the packaging waste, you launder it, you repair it, you re-put on tag, goes on another tag, then it gets shipped to store, and then you've got to pay for the people to actually sell it, and then you're actually sacrificing a full price sale to sell something secondhand. It's still got to be profitable, because otherwise we can't actually afford to do it. That thinking has evolved in the time that we've been doing this, and we are a little bit frustrated because we have been talking about this forever. In some senses, we've been doing it, and there's been others out there shouting about it. But I'm kind of grateful for that, because they've kind of paved the way for us, this level of acceptability. The price point doesn't have to be $2.50 like you see at Vinnie's. Yeah. Actually, people are used to paying reasonable prices for pre-loved clothing or product, because they can see and understand the value that sits behind that product getting back to market. Now, some things are going to be minor repairs, some things are complete reconstructions. Yeah. I think, though, this is a really necessary part of us solving the climate crisis and actually reducing the footprint of a business, is actually taking responsibility for that product. And we've just applied for a really exciting grant that I would love to name in the hope that we get it. But I won't. But what it will do, if we're successful with this grant, is actually provide us with a quite radical thinking solution for dealing with some of that waste that is completely hacked. And we will occasionally get things that, people, I don't know what they do sometimes, but, they don't follow the washing instructions for a knit, and actually turns out something that my dog could wear. It's tiny. What do you do with that? And we want to be able to create a solution for that. So I think that a lot of the talk that you see today is sort of this bit of disparity, a lot of disparity between government expectations and demands and public opinion, and the reality of actually what the industry currently can offer as solutions for waste. There isn't a lot out there. And I think that as we have demonstrated over our 20 years, that we're kind of on our own. We've had to figure this out on our own. We've had to bring our own resources in. We've had to be pushing for things when they didn't exist. And I truly believe there are some fantastic organisations out there like Apparel. They can't deal with the scale of waste. They just cannot, in comparison to what consumers are actually buying and consuming. It so far outstrips the options and the alternatives now that we have for dealing with waste at the end of life, like for the shrunk jumper. So we're now going, okay, well, we will do what we can to get a product back into market, whether it's through our own stores, whether it's online, whether it's encouraging our customers to actually resell with some of the fantastic partners that are out there. But when something's really cooked, we might need to take responsibility for that ourselves. So but this machinery that we're looking at is a couple $100,000. So how do we fund that? And that's where now grants are available. So maybe there's a solution there. So it's all about figuring it out ourselves, really.
Let's hope you get that grant. I just absolutely love, because there's a lot of talking about recycling, but you're talking about renewing, repurposing, reselling. So that's true circularity, keeping the product keeping its life cycle going for as long as we can, and not having to, go to landfill or even go into recycling, because there's a lot of processing that's involved. It's a great solution, but there's a lot of processing that's involved in that. So I absolutely love the pre-loved element as well, and getting the customers involved. I just think that, it's much needed in our industry, and I hope you get that grant, Marnie.
Me too.
Now, in addition to all of these amazing initiatives that you and your team are working on, you're also at the forefront of partnerships and community, and there's a lot of organisations that you work with from a social responsibility perspective. So let's just quickly touch on that. But I've got a list of them. There's like 1% for Planet, there's Tree Project, there's UNICEF, there's the volunteering that you mentioned, that your team, you actually give them a couple of days a year, I believe, to go out and volunteer. So there's a lot of community activity going on. How do you manage that, and how have those partnerships evolved over time?
We've had partnerships since we first existed. So UNICEF was probably the first one that we had. I think what we want to do, as going back to our foundations, was about having a positive influence on people and providing opportunities for those through the business that we created. And that's something that we've held true to from the beginning, because, we love being part of a community wherever it is that we live or wherever we choose to operate our business. And I think that our perspective is that we're a global community. We have impact through our business, undeniable impact through our business, through our carbon footprint, through the environments that we grow and produce our fibres in, to the environments that we actually produce our product in. So how do we actually just be real about it? How do we go, well, our eyes are open, and we want to be able to go some way to combating that impact, but also to giving back and taking some level of responsibility. Now, we do that through a multitude of ways, which are many of which you've actually just talked about. And we want that to be something that our team feels connected to as well, because if that team feel connected, that buy-in is so much stronger. Like, we want our team to be passionate about this. It just doesn't want to be something that we just talk about because it just sounds like hot air otherwise. We want them to really truly believe and to get their fingers in the soil and plant the trees and grow the seedlings and pick up the rubbish. And, I can't tell you, anyone that's listening to this that's a business owner, the idea of getting your team down into the creek to pick up rubbish sounds very unglamorous. And there are people in our organisation who really aren't into that, but very few. But I can't tell you the fist pumping and the competition that comes out when someone pulls a tire out of the creek or a big old dirty piece of carpet and goes, I've just got, 20 kilos more of rubbish than what you have. But, it's actually an incredibly important team building activity, because we're asking people to go, you know what, we're saying that our values are not just about the business. It's actually about community. It's about actually take a breath, step outside the business and look what else you can do. And, we're not saying that you have to do this every day, but just a moment in time for you to actually take a step back and take stock of what's important in life, because it's not just about coming to work at 9 and leaving at 5 and tearing your hair out in between. There's so much more going on in the world around us. And whilst we can't be active in those regions necessarily that we're making our product, we can sponsor tree growing, or we can actually grow the seedlings ourselves. We can actually there are some tangible results that we can see from the work that we do. I think one thing that we did though the last few years, was to join with 1% for the Planet. And the reason we did that was because I think what we wanted to do is, there's so many incredible organisations out there and charities and partners that we could work with, but we needed to focus our attention. And we went, we have our greatest impact is on the environment, so therefore we are going to focus our efforts on environmental causes. And we felt that working with 1% for the Planet gave us a great deal of transparency, and it gave us partners to align ourselves with that we felt had credible links back to individual causes, that the money was going into places that had been channeled into areas that were really specifically needed. One challenge that we came up against was our partnership with UNICEF that we'd been working with, and we were a platinum champion for children since 2011. That UNICEF don't traditionally have an environmental focus, so they weren't actually accredited with 1% for the Planet. But we went back to them and said, well, look, we really want to still work with you guys. We think that the impact that you have on the ground in areas where children benefit the most from the work that you're doing is something that we don't want to let go of. So we've worked through with them around a particular project that traditionally, though, don't allow funds to be channeled to a particular area because they want, obviously, the area of the greatest need to receive that money. But with them, they were great. They worked with us to actually go, okay, well, we can see a particular fund here that money could go to that would be then signed off by 1% for the planet and could then still fit in with our environmental focus.
That's amazing, because you've come up against a challenge and you've worked through it. I mean, you could have other options there of perhaps not working with that partner anymore, but you've put in the work and you've had an amazing outcome. Congratulations to you and your team with all of these organisations that you're supporting. And I love hearing about the team getting involved in that fist pumping down by the creek and the competitive element. You're really, truly living your values as an organisation, and that's something to be admired. Now, Marnie, I wanted to pick your brains around longevity. So 20 years in business. Let's share with our audience what you feel the key to longevity in this industry is.
I think the key to longevity in this industry is having a very real perspective. I think that we can be very dazzled by bright lights, and we can be dazzled by opportunities. But at the end of the day, we're running a business. And as unsexy and unfashionable as that sounds, without that really real connection to business and understanding that underneath all of that glamorous side of the fashion industry, that there's got to be all the nuts and bolts have got to be tight. And I think that's been definitely for Elk the key to our success. So we have ridden through a GFC, we've ridden through COVID, not easily, but successfully. We've ridden any ups and downs that the market's thrown at us. So I think that the key to longevity in the industry is understanding that behind everything is business, and that you've got to have a strong foundations to be able to ride at whatever the market throws at you. Most recently, interest rates have really been a challenge for us, and we've seen a real shift in consumers' ability to or willingness to actually spend, even on things that they deem as core items like our denim or our t-shirting or things that they would wear every day. There's a real reticence to spend, but a real consciousness around what they are spending. And I think that that's a wonderful thing from an environmental point of view. But it's a reality that as a business, we have to be able to withstand financial impacts or external pressures that come through things like that, because at the end of the day, we're about selling product, and we've got to pay wages, and we've got responsibilities to meet. So I think the other thing that key to Elk's success has been a realistic expectation of what our strengths and weaknesses are, what we can and can't do. Adam and I balance each other out quite well, and there's things that I'm dreadful at that I innately trust him to do, and vice versa. That works in a business where there's a relationship or a partnership. It doesn't mean that works for individual traders. But I think that goes back to your earlier question around, the key to success is to be able to outsource and to afford to outsource things that you can't do yourself, because if you try to do too much, you stretch yourself too thinly. And we're all good at something, or in some cases we're good at multiple things, but we're not good at everything. And there's definitely people who can bring experience into your business, who can bring strength into the business, or bring support or resources into the business that will ultimately make your business grow.
Such valuable insights there, Marnie. Now, in closing, I'd like to ask you, what excites you about the future of the fashion industry?
I cannot wait to see a shift in a focus around brands that are truly sustainable. I'm going to say, putting a little dent into a positive end note, I despair at seeing record sales with some of these huge companies that are still, I can't believe, selling fast fashion. But I'm really excited at what's ahead, because I think there's going to be a day of reckoning. I just think that consumers are going to globally stand up and go, that's enough, no more. As we are all succumb to, these dreadful, intense environmental situations, whether it's bushfire or flood or whatever it is. It's undeniable. The science is there. I think those who accept what's happening are going to outweigh those who are denying the climate change. And I think that ultimately, the story that we're telling, I'd like it to be boring down the track. I'd like Elk's story to be just so business as usual. And ironically, that excites me because there's not just Elk. There are so many fantastic businesses in Australia and worldwide who are doing what we're doing and fighting that fight. And we can still do it better, and we can still achieve our goals. And I would just want that to be normal. I really want this to be a kitchen table conversation that's just, every day.
What a great message to end on. I love your vision for the future of fashion. So I hope we do arrive there one day. Marnie, thank you so much for being so generous with your time and sharing all of those amazing insights into the Elk journey over the last 20 years. Here's to the longevity of Elk. We absolutely love everything you're about. So here's to another 20.
Thank you so much for your time. I love talking with you.
Thanks, Marnie. Thank you so much for listening to the Fashion Business Mindset podcast. We'd love to keep connected. You can find us on Instagram and Facebook at Fashion Equipped. Head to our website, fashionequipped.com.au. If you've enjoyed this episode, please share this podcast with others, hit subscribe, leave us a rating and review. Let's do this together. Let's make the fashion business your business.
This is a Guide Your Light network production, creating podcasts with purpose.